Hi, everyone. Welcome to Metaphysical. In our last episode, we talked about mysterious crystal skulls that have been found around the world and are said to possess powers. But what about the nature of a crystal itself makes that even possible? What crystal skull phenomena have been found that are almost too strange to believe, and why are Dan Aykroyd, Shirley MacLaine, and other celebrities obsessed with this? Join remote viewer John Vivanco and me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, to hear the data John's team found and for a show that's out of this world.
Yeah.
How you doing, John?
Good. Hello, everybody.
Good.
Good. Yeah. Crystals.
Crystals. We were joking earlier in the week that if John and I had a band, we would name it the Crystal Skulls with a Z.
With a Z. Yeah.
It would have
with
to
a
be.
Z. It would have to be. Yeah.
So,
I mean, that makes it more rad.
the nature of crystals, we got into this a little bit, in our last episode. But I had this I didn't get to share this in the last episode, so that's why I kind of feel like covering this again is kind of interesting. What if we reverse engineered a crystal based off of mythology? Okay. So, we talked about this in the last episode, how somehow the transformation process of a person cultivating transforms their body into, like monks and stuff. It'll transform their body into this crystal or transparent diamond-like body. Arhats in China are considered to have diamond-like bodies, like body of diamond. And I'm just wondering, this never really occurred to me until we were thinking about it. But what if you reverse engineered that? Are those crystals related to some type of, now, even if it's on a resonance level, are they related to some type of, higher level being, or the body of some higher level being? I wouldn't even understand how that worked really, but the idea is interesting because, you were even talking about how each of these crystals did something different for you and to your body. Like the pseudoscience of crystal and crystal healing is a thing.
Right.
It's just overlooked a lot. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, it makes me think of this old saying where I think this comes from some type of, I can't remember which native group has said this, but when the universe was created by God, there was the earth, and the earth didn't yet have all the imbuing of God. And so the earth cried for God to give itself more to it, right? So it was created out of everything's God to begin with, but this is the story. And God responded by imbuing itself in the earth as crystalline structures of all different forms and sizes. Right. And so some cultures think of gemstones and crystals as the most purest piece of God crystallized. So, it could just be from the natural beauty of it, but what's behind that ultimately is that there's something in it, because people have always felt that coming from crystals in general. What if they're also doorways into source? It's okay. So moldavite, for instance, that crystal that's found mainly, like, I think in Czechoslovakia on the surface.
Yes.
That one is highly, highly, highly energetic, but it doesn't actually come from the earth. It's not something that grew inside the earth. It's only sitting on the surface of the land. And we had remote viewed that, and that was related to some crystalline type structure that was used in a previous time that was responsible for creating a 0 point energy situation. And that those are pieces of it broken to smithereens during one of the old earth wars or cataclysms. It didn't come from the earth. And so it's like every single piece of crystal has this different personality to it.
Yeah.
It's like the many faces of God, if you want to call it that, right? And so I think about that what the natives have said about what crystals are, and it makes sense to me because they're very pristine, what it feels like to me in their consciousness. Very pristine, very delicate, and very, very punctual about what they do in general. But what if they're doorways? Like, what if crystals are doorways? What if they can be used as doorways? So I knew this when I was in art school. I was in art school in Laguna Beach, California.
Oh,
I went to I went to the Art Institute there, and there was this guy. His name was Dr. Fred Bell, and he was a NASA whistleblower, and he had worked for NASA, all this stuff. My friend knew him because he took Kung Fu with him.
Nice.
And so me and my friend used to go over to his house and hang out with him, and he had like the most massive pieces of quartz crystal with high-powered laser beams shooting into them all throughout his house. And it's like I was a kid. I didn't really know what to think about it. I was like, why what are you doing here? And he would like explain to me how crystal technology is something that we know nothing about. And these things can open up portals to other worlds, can transport us places if we know how to use them. And he literally was trying to open up portals by shooting like these red lasers, super high powered lasers, into the crystals. And it would just shoot these weird, like pixelated patterns all over the walls and stuff. It's like you can see in the air a pixelated pattern shooting out of these lasers. So, I think that they can be used as doorways to other worlds. Now, what does that do to a body? Do you turn into that specific type of crystalline construct that is transporting you? Is it different for every type of crystal? I don't know. I mean, they all have different.
Or is there like a recipe of crystals that you put together that will create the doorway? Or
right.
That's fascinating to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. No clue.
Well, and but it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before too, because monks that pass away, or that, I don't know what you want to call it, ascend or whatever it is, like when their bodies are left here, like, and they've achieved quote unquote nirvana or whatever, people will find sarira left in their body. Sarira are these like crystalline stones that get found in their bodies that no one else has.
Really?
Like non-monks don't have these, but monks will have these. And it could be Christian or Buddhist or whatever. We're not talking about like a denomination here.
Yeah.
It's more of like a high level of like purity of body produces sometimes, and like, the Chinese think that it's exploded energy. That when they're, the exploded energy turned into this substance, but it's like a sort of like crystal, rocky type of substance.
Really?
Yeah, for real. Yeah, we've actually had a couple of shows where we talk about this on Edge of Wonder too, just because it's such an interesting phenomena,
Right. That's very, very interesting. That's very strange. I mean, like I said before, we've seen in data where a person, a human, that literally gets so pure of mind that it transforms through their whole body. It's like their body transforms into complete crystalline light, a complete total crystalline light form. I don't know if that means the body stays behind and that something else happens to the energetic body, right? But that finding the crystal is really curious in these people who have died that way. I mean, that's really curious. I thought perhaps the body just disappeared, like the whole body transformed.
Well, yeah, like a force, it like kind of like force evaporates or whatever, like Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he just like disappears, or Yoda just kind of like disappears. Anything is possible, right? But we're talking about other dimensional things. Right. It's sort of like, how many ways are there to skin a cat? probably there's that many ways of ascension out there that we're not even aware of.
Right.
You know,
Right.
death being one of them, obviously, because the, you know, different characters have taken that path throughout history.
Right. Right.
But, you know, the back to the crystal skulls, though, is, you know, these crystal skulls are reported to have some strange phenomena that back them. Got a little bit of Obi-Wan Kenobi on screen right now. The scene with Vader where
He's gonna do it. Yeah, he did it.
There it is.
Yeah, that's what I think happens.
Yeah,
I think he just disappear.
I think you're gonna disappear.
I think so too.
Okay, so the strange phenomena, right? Okay, I got a quote here. This is kind of interesting. Quote, the first time I kept the skull in my home overnight, I was awakened by unusual noises in the house. It sounded like a large jungle cat was prowling through the house, accompanied by the sound of chimes and bells. When we got up the next morning, our possessions were strewn all about the house, yet all the doors and windows were still closed and locked from the inside.
Huh.
So either it was the CIA or it was some other dimensional thing.
Or like a poltergeist. Where did that quote come from?
That's a good question. That quote came from...
Who said that?
I believe that was this Anna who owned the crystal? No. We're going to find out exactly who it was from.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of funky stuff that can happen around these things. I guarantee it. There's a lot of funky stuff that can happen. Just around crystals in general. Honestly, it's like you go back to that thing being like this representation of a mystery from another world.
Yeah.
And I just think that anything can happen. And crystals having this energy, I mean, proven piezoelectricity, it's like there's something going on with them that we don't know about. Like, this is the thing that trips me out about crystals. If crystals were so important in the past, which they seem to be, and we see this in remote viewing data all the time, they were used for a lot of different things. Where'd that information go? Like, why? Why don't we have that information when they were so dang important? I mean, I just don't understand it. I don't get it.
Well, maybe humans would develop too fast if that knowledge was known and it was purposely kept from us because of what it did to the last civilization that used them. I mean, reportedly, the Atlanteans had gotten pretty jacked up by the end of their civilization. They were mating with beasts and creating like 5-star figure, like animal things. I mean, like the genetics had gotten really screwed up. Yeah. You know, I honestly think that's where the story of the Minotaur comes from.
Totally, that's what I think too.
Yeah, is that it was some beast left over from Atlantis that Hercules had to, like, you know, punch.
yeah. I mean, that's what we've seen. You know, that's what we've seen. Like, what Sinbad fights. You know, when you get into like the claymation Sinbad movies, it's like fighting the Cyclops and stuff like that. Minotaur Cyclops.
Oh yeah.
All this is like all Atlantean. Genetic engineering.
Well, I think partly, but I also think that there were, like, like if we go back to the entire history of humans, I really believe there were so many more types of species of different things that had just over time we lost sight of, or they've gone underground, or they're in the ocean. We don't know where they are anymore, or they disappeared. You know, and disappeared like went extinct. Because I mean, we're talking about like history of things like dwarves and hobbits and leprechauns and different weird things across the European countries, and then all we're left with is this very surface, like, human species and what science tells us is true and real.
Right. You know, it could have been all of that stuff: dwarves, fairies, mer people, whatever. All of that stuff that was wiped out a long time ago, but we've got the giants now that are still like showing up as remnants on this earth because they were the last ones that were erased.
The closest to us, kind of, right?
To us,
that we're aware of, anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and
I do think that's what it is.
You know, in talking about other planets here, you know, that the initial story of those crystal skulls, those 13 crystal skulls, is that each of the skulls contained information from the 13 populated planets in our galaxy, something like that, right? And that, you know, there was one that was sort of like it had all of the information, and you bring them all together and something happens.
Right.
You know, so, you know, the idea that these crystal skulls could potentially also be a gateway into these other planets for different reasons is potential as well, which is kind of
I know
strange.
that, but that's the thing. So okay, so going back into that, it's like I've got to find out where that information comes from, because that
Me
information,
too.
it's like
It's too convenient. Like, it just seems like the plot to, you know, another Indiana Jones movie that somebody made up that somehow everybody construes as being I don't know. Yeah, where did it come from?
Right. That's what I want to know, because I know that I mean, some native populations will take on the current mythology that was created around it for whatever reason. But so I don't know. It's like when you get to some of these stories of Native American elders. I think there was one story of Native American elders went before the UN to talk about how the 13 skulls are coming together. But I mean, this could be a true thing. It literally could be.
No, it could. But why would you go in front of the UN? Like, oh,
Because,
I'm going to go to the one world order.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, I mean, a lot of people trust those people in those constructs still. I don't know why, when they've proven to not be trustworthy. So I don't know. I mean that is really interesting to me, because okay, so how many of these skulls have they supposedly found?
I know. And it's only the Mitchell Hedges one that's like actually significant. Like, we don't know who, like, it's like the Ark of the Covenant. Where is it really? You know, it's probably in a warehouse somewhere that one of these big organizations, like that Mossad has, or that the CIA has, or something, right? And yeah, it's strange. It's like, why don't we? You know, could it be that this was? I mean, I'm theorizing here, but maybe that story actually was the native story in Central America that then ended up kind of being retold by ancient aliens in some of these other places.
Right.
That's my most likely stab at where that story came from, is that if we went into the native cultures and looked, we might find it there, but we do have to like confirm that. I can't confirm that right now.
Right.
But I can confirm. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, go. What can you confirm?
I was going to say, I can confirm that quote that I talked before about the jungle cat thing,
Right.
You know, like being in the house and stuff. This was from Frank Dorland, a San Francisco-based art conservator that told that story to Richard Garvin, the author of the Crystal Skull book.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd want to know if this guy had a lot of paranormal experiences in his house before that.
Agreed.
I mean, you know, I can't take these things at face value.
I know, me either.
Right? You just can't. But so when you get to the crystal skulls that are apparently known and not, I mean, I've had people come into my remote viewing courses when I do live in-person courses and bring like a crystal skull with them, and they wanted the crystal skull to kind of like be involved. I don't know. I just, you know, literally, like, they want the crystal skull to like
absorb the energy.
Absorb something that's going on, because according to the people that I've talked to, they have a personality and the person that has the skull is the protector of it, right? Is the guardian of the crystal skull, and the crystal skull is from a specific location. Now, I don't know where they got that information, where it came from, and how they even got like a big crystal skull. I suppose you can get those machine made now, and then it's imbued with whatever energy. I have no idea, because they do hold energy, and they do hold a type of consciousness that I'm sure can definitely mixes with your own consciousness. then it's severely anthropomorphized. So I've had people come into my classes that have brought them, and I don't know why, they just do it. And they want it to watch because it wants to learn or something. So there is that happens with people on an individual level. But how do you separate that from the ones that are in the museums that the Smithsonian discounted? Like, because what this whole thing turns into is that, hey, that person's got a crystal skull, and that person's got a crystal skull, and that person's got a crystal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they all start to claim that they're guardians of a certain type of crystal skull. Like, I don't understand. Like it just starts to get so weird, spread out, that you don't even know where to go with any of it anymore.
It's true. You know, I will say something. The Indiana Jones movies, I know the last movie was terrible, the Crystal Skull movie, but generally the first three movies, after having done all of my research on different things at Edge of Wonder, I found to be unsettlingly accurate about some of these relics. Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, the first film, The Raiders of the Lost Ark, if you were to combine the Ark with the Spear of Destiny, the exact story that Indiana Jones told is basically true. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So what's really weird, and we go over this in our Relics of Power series on rise.tv, but the Spear of Destiny, the reason why they were looking for the Ark in Indiana Jones was because whoever had the Ark, they would be unbeatable in battle. And this is why Hitler was looking for it. That was actually the story of the spear. But the Ark also had some of these characteristics. So Hitler was also interested in it, but not as interested in as having the spear. Okay. If you listen at the beginning of that film, he talks about, I can't remember who he cited, that the person with the foremost knowledge on the Ark was a guy named Ravenscroft. And Trevor Ravenscroft wrote the Spear of Destiny book, which has all of the information about the Spear of Destiny.
Oh, interesting.
So he was citing Ravenscroft and telling the story of Spear of Destiny through the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it was like, and we're talking about Spielberg, someone who's known to have gotten information from different entities and told different stories, even stories that are like, Strange Encounters of the Third Kind. What was that movie again?
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Excuse me. The Indiana Jones, then the second film, The Temple of Doom, and what they outline about the Thuggee cult and the stones, the Sankara stones. It's just like strangely accurate stuff. Where was Spielberg getting his information from? Because it was it was fantastic information that you can track, right? And the third, the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is literally like the immortality key. Like, this is the story that like between Jesus's death and like 1300, everyone, like, there were cultivators cultivating to achieve the Holy Grail. Like, this was their path, and the Holy Grail meant so much more than just the cup Jesus drank from. It was like beyond that entire thing. And the story they retold was strangely historically accurate in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So what I'm trying to say is, wouldn't it make sense that they were retelling some of the Crystal Skull story properly in the Crystal, like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull? And I'm not saying all of it, because obviously that skull was made to have an elongated head and it looked like an alien and all of that stuff. But, was it of alien origin? Does it do the things that they were talking about it doing in the movie? Like, there may be some disclosure in there, know?
Right. Well, I agree. I think there's going to be soft disclosure in these things, especially when it comes to a filmmaker of that stature. Because, we know that intelligence has been involved in Hollywood since, I don't know how long.
It's Hollywood.
Yeah, it's Hollywood. It's
since the movie Nosferatu came out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure that there's information in there that is absolutely correct. I think that with the crystal skulls, and you get to going back, like pulling it back a little bit, and you get to the idea of crystal skulls and how it gets so, people get so excited about it, and then the story convolutes itself into everybody getting a crystal skull and then claiming power behind it, whether it's true or not, or whether it begins to take on a power because there's so much going into it, because crystals will literally hold a vibration. They will hold a vibration. And I think you can probably get one yourself and completely focus on it and bring a vibration into it that it can take, like a tulpa can take on a life of its own. I've got to feed my crystal skull now. It's hungry, that kind of thing. So I think, and so there's truth across the board. Truth across the board in a crystal skull, because it's got crystal properties that transform the ether.
Right.
How do you want it to transform? So, but the ones that are ancient, the ones that go back before this age, that's with technology. There's a technology most likely around that. So that might be a little bit different than the ones that are created today. Ultimately.
Oh yeah. And of course, like, objects can take on energy from people, not even just crystals. Crystals might be more absorbent, but
they're haunted objects.
Yeah. Haunted objects. I mean, Harry Potter type crap,
Right.
Yeah. And that stuff totally exists. But yeah, so, was kind of interesting is Dan Aykroyd appeared on the Joe Rogan show not too long ago. It was a few years ago, I think. He had just come out with his crystal skull vodka or something. Yeah, crystal.
Oh yeah, I know that.
Vodka.
I got that for Christmas once. Seriously, I did. And he's got webbed toes.
They were like, give this to Uncle John.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's the crazy one in the family.
Exactly. I was like, this is too like pop culture.
Well,
for me.
I kind of feel like Aykroyd was allowed. He must have like PR, some type of connections to be able to get on the Rogan show and talk about his vodka. Right. He probably made a killing for a little while, but they actually brought some substance into the show because they were talking about the knowledge of the crystal skull, a bunch of like UFO abductions and different things. And you can tell that Aykroyd was a salesman in this episode. He's wearing the hat.
Look at his hat.
Constantly bringing up the skull to like, and they're drinking like vodka from it, and
oh man.
But whatever. I'm not criticizing him. I hope he makes he makes some money from it. But
when was this? You know when this was?
It was like I think it was 2018, 2019. Okay. Right. Might have been. We'll find the date. But yeah, so it's interesting because it's kind of gotten into our pop culture a little bit more, and Aykroyd is a bit weirder among Hollywood folks, like has been. Like, I actually think he's kind of like Ray in Ghostbusters in real life.
Right.
Like, he's analytical, but he's fascinated by it at the same time, So yeah, there's like been a lot of this stuff leaking, and there's been a bunch of movies too. There's been a bunch of movies, and one, I have to say, this is really, I haven't looked into this yet, and I really want to. Reportedly, one of the crystal skulls was found in Ohio, John.
What?
One of the crystal skulls was reportedly found in Ohio.
Where?
Allegedly. Serpent Mound? I don't know. Like,
well, but who has it?
Is it called Serpent Mound? I don't even know what it's called in Ohio. It's called
Serpent
Mound.
Like there is the Serpent Mound.
I haven't been able to track it, but like right before the episode, I started finding information that one of these was found in Ohio, and I was like, John and I are going to have to go check that out.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So one of them was supposedly found, but
there was a crystal skull conference there too, I think. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, everyone brings their crystal skulls to the conference.
Serpent Mound is not in Ohio, though, is it?
Connect. That's in Ohio, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It is. You're right. I'm just making sure. I want to make sure I'm giving people the right information.
Right. they supposedly found it there.
I mean, well, apparently, allegedly, right? That's interesting because that, now remember, like, I mean, gosh, Ohio is a weird place, like way weirder than I thought. Actually, the entire Midwest, like from here to like Lake Michigan, Chicago, is bizarre. The stuff that's around here, I mean, there's weird stuff everywhere, but like, come on, how these like giant mounds in Ohio? It's
Well,
weird.
so in that article, it said that 13 crystal skulls were brought to the Serpent Mound in order to open up the psychic energy or something. But these aren't like the original crystal skulls, right?
No, probably just
they're
random.
ones that,
yeah,
right, that people bought. And so I don't know, like, what's the difference? I mean, I'm not sure. Like, what's the difference between the old ones and the new ones? I mean, get into remote viewing data if you want to go into that.
Okay, so they also, yes, we're definitely getting into that in a second. I'm just going to relay this to everyone. They also supposedly found one of the old ones at Serpent Mound. So that's
one of the old ones. So,
one of the older ones
would have been buried.
Yeah. And I think, maybe their whole, think about when they did this. It was October. It's 2011. 2012 is upon us. The Mayan calendar is about to end, and they're like, let's join our crystal skulls together and see if we can stop the ending of the world. Probably in that voice.
Right.
And, so they brought all of those skulls together, and, probably
and they literally stopped the world from ending.
It worked, guys. Good job. We're here.
It worked.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably what was going on but of course, like some of those crystal skulls could have been a hoax and not the original 13 that they had created back in the day,
Right. Well, I mean, it's like those the crystal skulls that they, like I say, the ones that were in the museums that had been in the museums for a while, were supposedly fakes, but we don't know if they're fakes or not. I mean, when I think of fakes, I can't even fathom how they could be faked, according to current understandings of where humans have been in general. I just don't get that part at all. So I don't understand what would be real or not real other than through remote viewing. And real to me, so it's like you have to set the boundaries for what's real and what's not real. Like, the boundary for me is that the real ones are from another era.
Age. Yes.
Age. That's it. And as far as I know, we don't have anything to determine the age of those. So we just don't, like, as far as technology goes.
Right. So John, John, tell everyone what remote viewing is, and then I think you guys have viewed the Mitchell Hedges skull, right? So tell us what you found.
Yeah. Okay. So remote viewing, first off, it was developed in the 1970s by Stanford Research Institute. CIA paid for that because they wanted to understand if they could use psychics as spies. And through that program, they did determine that they could, but it had to be in a way that was different than how people normally approached psychics. It had to be in a very controlled way. And the controlled way is by using multiple people who run through a methodology that they're trained in, and they are blind to what they are viewing. And then that information typically goes to an analyst, and an analyst will kind of put all the congruent pieces and parts together to build a picture. So that methodology is what we use in projects. It isn't like, it's psychic information, but it's a bit more than that and a bit more precise. So when we looked at the Mitchell Hedges, like where this thing originated and why it originated is very old. Very,
it is.
very, very, very old.
So the specific Mitchell Hedges skull that you guys viewed. The specific
Mitchell Hedges skull is very freaking old. This is not something like within the last 10,000 years even. This is older.
Like, are we talking about millions?
It could be. It literally could be. This is something that came from an ancient civilization. This is something that the data was describing as it was buried under the remnants of an ancient civilization, and it's been completely, totally forgotten about through time, and that the current civilizations have built and built and built on top of it, and that when it came out uncovered, nobody understands the connection anymore. Nobody understands like where it came from, because that civilization is way long gone.
Yeah.
Way long gone. We're not talking about the Mayans. We're not talking about the Aztecs. So this is the other thing too, when when the Smithsonian comes in and says that, well, the Mayans and Aztecs didn't have access to crystal in Madagascar or Brazil, and so this is a debunking factor. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Because it wasn't the Mayans. It literally wasn't the Mayans, right? And so when we looked at what it was about, first off, it's female. The Mitchell Hedges skull is feminine in nature.
I feel that. I can get that.
Right. Yeah. And it has to do with the death of a female who was priestess-like, powerful, coming from a matriarchal lineage that on Earth, where matriarchy was what ruled, not patriarchy. And this skull was part of her death ritual, where the skull is a remembrance, but not just a remembrance. This consciousness formed the energy of it. The consciousness literally formed the energy of it. Now,
like
this
person, yeah.
What's that?
I was just gonna say, like, first of all, you're blowing my mind right now, because scientists actually said it was female too, based on the bone structure.
Oh, they did.
Oh, they did.
All right.
Yeah, so that's crazy. But then,
there you go. Okay.
You know, right away when you're talking about this stuff, I'm thinking, you know, could be some type of technology that we don't understand from the past that was based off of types of rituals we don't understand.
It was a technology that created it. Absolutely. It was a technology that created it. People didn't like sit there and polish it for 300 years. And they just didn't do that.
Yeah, but they should have. That'd be interesting.
They should have. Right. Maybe some of them they did. I don't know.
Those really old monks that are 1,000 years old, just that was his cultivation path, was polishing the skull.
Right. Yeah. So this skull is an aspect of this individual's consciousness. And she was like this. She was a leader. She was a priestess. She was highly energetic, she was magical, because our data suggests that these ancient cultures. Okay, so right now we're materialists. Yes. We don't take into account ether, for instance. We don't take into account things that aren't super physical. Everything outside of super physical doesn't exist. But these other cultures knew how to work those. That's why we have pyramids in these other cultures. We don't know how to measure energy from pyramids. So we discount any energy, even though it's apparent, right? It's the same thing with crystalline structures from the perspective of holding a consciousness or energy. So this feminine consciousness arranged that particular skull into a specific vibration in order to, in a sense, still have this thing speak to its people.
Wow.
After it left here. But now here's the other thing. This is also alien in origin as far as how the technology was created, because that was a time when aliens were more interactive with Earth, where aliens would come and go from this planet, where the beings here would accept their presence and their guidance on things for civilization and culture.
So you're saying that the culture that produced it was human, but it was influenced by aliens, potentially?
Yeah, it was influenced by aliens, because all that we've seen is that throughout the universe, beings planet hop. They explore. They go from planet to planet to planet. gathering resources, encountering new cultures and civilizations to see how they can spread. And our solar system is not outside of that. We're just right now we've got our blinders on. The cage has been closed around us, right? Yeah. But in the past here, that it wasn't like that. It was not like that. The cultures here that grew in the past, according to our data, were involved with other space races, and so it was a normal thing. Like when we look at moldavite, for instance, like literally what we got with that was a war that was happening on this planet between other races, humans as well as space races. And one of the things that one of the races wanted was this huge crystalline structure that was a power plant that was moldavite. And when when they took this big device and started going out of the atmosphere with it, they were attacked by, it sounds nuts, this is the data though, right? They were attacked by another ship which blew up the device and everything else, and it literally laid waste to the land. Wow. Because it was so poisonous, like radioactive to a degree, laid waste to the land where in Czechoslovakia for hundreds and hundreds of years.
It was like the Chernobyl of a past age.
Exactly. It was like a Chernobyl. Someone's trying to make off with this massive crystalline, like 0 point device. It gets blown up in the atmosphere and just rains down all over Czechoslovakia.
I can totally see that.
Right. And so now you can buy a piece of that like device in a sense.
The melted device that went nuclear.
The melted device that went nuclear. That's what we've seen. I mean, it sounds absolutely nuts, but you know, it's where we go.
You know what's really interesting? This is crazy. We're coming back at this, but this was from our Holy Grail episode. We actually had a little excerpt about moldavite. So that Relics of Power episode that we did, some actually claim that the Grail stone was made of moldavite.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, green like the Grail is sometimes claimed to be and brought down from another world. So it's interesting that most of these stone Grail stories indicate that it came here from another place by higher beings, moldavite.
Absolutely.
Weird. Right. Dude.
It's weird. Yeah. It's really weird. So it's like, it's a funny thing. So think about this too. It's like, all right, let's say you're a race on another planet and you have interaction with beings from other planet. They help you. They help culture. They exchange technology. You accept them as helpful teachers, as other beings that have other experiences. But right now, what would happen if we had those types of beings come to our planet? We'd either like treat them as gods or we'd try and kill them. Yeah. Right? I mean, literally, that's what would happen now because nobody believes that kind of stuff exists. When that is like a normal thing that happens in the universe. And so those beings, when you think about this too, those beings who want to come to this planet to help to a certain degree, what do they have to do? They have to reincarnate here. And they have to somehow keep an energetic connection to their past, where they have a mission to bring other ideas from other space civilizations here. And I think that's a lot of what people talk about with the Starseeds. You know, people talk about Starseeds. Well, yeah, it's that thing, because you can't now just drop into a planet in your spaceship and say, hey, I got this stuff for you.
No, there are rules.
With your culture, everybody's like, ah, or ah.
Yeah.
Right?
Shoot it, kill it with fire.
Right. Now it's like, okay, you got to jump into the washing machine of Earth 3D physical reality, reincarnate as one of them, and then
the trash dump, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Right. Jeez. Man, that's fascinating, and I totally agree with what you said. Like, I think that's how a lot of this culture actually gets spread down, is that there are beings that come down, they have a memory and a mission, and they follow the mission, and that's how a lot of stuff gets passed down. Except there is a lot of exceptions to that rule, because we've got like a bunch of interference from alien technology here, right? And
agreed. Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. That's another thing that we see quite a bit of.
I bet. Yeah,
just tons of interference and control and manipulation by darker groups. Yeah. And not so much. I mean, it's like the there's this sort of, from what I see, from what we've seen, there's this sort of like barrier where it's a whole karmic sort of thing, and a being has to go through its karma in order to learn.
Yes.
And other beings won't necessarily get involved in trying to help a being out of that karma.
No. Yeah, that's
because it's the responsible of the individual or group of individuals that got themselves into it in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
That's how sin works. That's how karma works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So we can be manipulated by dark things because we're in that sort of karmic progression of it until we realize, oh, we don't have to be that way.
Yeah. Fascinating. Man, this episode has been pretty rad going through all of this. A bunch of different interesting things that we went into too. I hope you guys at home enjoyed this episode. We're at the end of our 45 minutes here. And John, thanks so much for being here. This is awesome. Love this time we have together where we
this is great.
Shoot the you know what. Yeah, and you guys, make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching us on, and hit the notification bell if there is one, because we want to grow this channel as soon as possible and reach a lot more people. And rate us, review us on podcasts, whatever you can do. And thanks for being here with us. John, thank you so much. Did you have anything else to add?
Be vigilant and
stay curious.
Salty.
Stay salty. Stay salty as those other conspiracy theory shows, John.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The black-pilled people. We'll stay away from them.
Exactly.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.